Welcome to your tutorial on graphing sine and cosine. So sine and cosine are pretty easy to graph once you know the tricks to graphing them without doing tables. So, when I say tables, I'm talking about like these XY tables where you have this kind of painful approach towards putting in X's and getting out Y's. So I'll walk you through the idea of it at first, and then what we'll say is we don't need to do tables after looking at it the first time. So if you were to graph sine over here in this grid, here's how you would do it. First, what I want you to do is create one yourself on a piece of paper, just like I have here. And notice that I've given quite a bit more room for the x-axis than you might be used to back in your algebra class, and that's intentional. So from the origin, count out on your graph grid. So always do this on graph paper. From your graph grid, count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces. So just count out 8 spaces and put a little tick mark there. Now, you'll call that tick mark 2 pi because the period of sine and cosine is 2 pi. The next thing you want to do is go in halfway. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So at the fourth spot, what's half of 2 pi? It is pi. So mark that one as pi. Go halfway in from that. That would be 2 marks in, and half of pi is pi over 2. So we'll mark that as pi over 2. Okay, now halfway between pi and 2 pi, that value would be 3 pi over 2. It's important to mark your x-axis and also your y-axis. So now let's look at the y-axis. The y-axis is marked by doing this. Go 1, 2, 3, 4. You can go up 4 spaces or 2 spaces or 3 spaces. This is not something that you can make choices about the y-axis. Once you make that choice, I went up 4. Now I need to go down 4. So whatever you went up, now you go down 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll call that -1. I definitely would not want you putting 1 at this level right here. The reason for that is that your graph looks squashed, so it doesn't look good, and then you end up running into the numbers as you're graphing. So don't put 1 here. Go up higher, at least 2, and I would recommend to the 3rd or the 4th tick mark on the y-axis. Okay, are we ready to graph? Now the graphing is done this way. At 0, what is the value, the y value at 0? Sine of 0 equals 0. So what this means is that we have on the graph the ordered pair of 0, 0. So I will mark that right here. So I'm making a big mark right there. The next mark I want to do is at pi over 2. Okay, so the x-axis mark is my guideline on what I want for my input. So sine of pi over 2, and if you'll remember, pi over 2 is 90 degrees. So that equals 1. So now what you're graphing is at pi over 2, you'll go up 1. All right, so I'll do that now. I'll go up here and I'll make a point right here. And I keep doing this, all right? So I'm now going to input pi and I'll evaluate what sine of pi is. And that's 180 degrees and sine of pi is 0, and therefore I have a point on the graph of pi comma 0. So let's plot that again, going back to the graph right here. Sine of 3 pi over 2 is -1. That's that 270 degree mark. And sine of 2 pi is 0. So as you can see, I've just really, skipped ahead and I let you guys in on, these values here, and you can verify them for yourself. But there we are. So these are your 5 main points. Now, in the future, I don't want you guys to do this XY table at all. It's not necessary. what you can do when you're graphing sine is remember the pattern of sine. Now let's go ahead and let's try and create a nice smooth curve as best we can, hitting those points and creating a curve, not connecting them in straight lines, but do connect them as a curve. So this is my graph of y equals sine of x. And I want you guys in particular to notice that this whole thing was graphed off of these 5 points, and I'm just going to highlight these 5 points in red. And in general, this is what I need you guys to be able to do is graph from these 5 points. So what you need to memorize is the look of the graph and how the points are arranged. So I call the x-axis, this is the x-axis, I call the x-axis baseline. So you'll hear me say out loud baseline when I'm referring to the point on the x-axis. So I want you to look at how these are arranged. This goes baseline, high, baseline, low, baseline. And that's pretty much all I need for you to know and not create a table in order to graph sine. All right, you do need to mark the x-axis and the y-axis. All right, let's go to cosine. By the same argument, once again, we can talk about this table and then we won't do any more tables after we talk about it. Okay, and we'll just go by also 5 points for cosine. So exactly the same as sine, let's set up our x-axis. So we'll go out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Go out 8 spots and mark it as 2 pi. So this is 2 pi. Come in halfway. 1, 2, 3, 4. Half of 2 pi is pi. Go in halfway from that. Half of pi is pi over 2. Okay, remember that the middle point over here needs to be marked as well, and that is 3 pi over 2. So once I have that marked, I'm ready to start plotting points. And you'll remember what cosine looks like after I do this one time. Okay, so once again, let's put in 0 and let's evaluate. Cosine of 0. Cosine of 0 is 1. Okay, so my very first point is up on the y-axis at 1. And oh, let's not forget 1, 2, 3, 4. Go up and we'll call that 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go down here and call that -1. Right? Okay, so let's go up here and let's place our very first point. And that comes from this ordered pair, right? 0, 1. So that's why I'm marking that. And the next one to have to explore is pi over 2. So we plug that into cosine, and we remember again that cosine of 90 degrees, which is pi over 2, equals 0. So I will go right here and mark it. Okay. The next one to consider is pi, and that's 180 degrees. So cosine of pi is -1. Cosine of pi is -1. So let's go down here and place that point right there. Okay, let's consider 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2 is on the y-axis. So here we go. And I say that when I'm thinking about the unit circle that's 270 degrees. And so that would be a 0, right? And so let's go back to baseline, place a 0 right there. And now let's go to 2 pi, and cosine of 2 pi is 1, right? So here we are, and let's once again let's do our as best we can, nice smooth curve connecting our points, and there we go. We're making cosine to look like that. All right, there we are. This is the graph of cosine. And once again, let's rehearse what we really need to know here is one point, another point here, another point here, just these 5 points and how they look for cosine. And here it's high. Okay, so I'll even write this time high, and then this point right here, I'm calling that baseline, right? So high, baseline, and then we have the lowest point right here. That's the next one, low, and then you've got, again, another baseline, and then you have high here, okay? So if you know what cosine looks like, you just plot these 5 points, high, baseline, low, baseline, high, knowing how to also create the x-axis, and you're good to go, right? So that is the most basic way to graph sine and cosine. One thing that you will notice is that we will also alter at times the amplitude. So in my next video, I want to graph with you y equals, and then what if I put a number in front of sine? That's called amplitude. If I put 3 sine of x, this right here is called amplitude. And let's address that in the very next video. Thanks for staying tuned. I hope you guys are doing well with your graphing. Let me know if you have any questions.